Tighter world grain supplies than what the market expected, more demand for US Gulf grain, and the Friday markets closing down. The one who comment that is Jerry Gidel, right here on Connected Farmer, your channel to keep you up to date with the latest trends in agriculture and livestock. So Jerry, how are you today? So the market is going down today, but we started with the week with these tighter supplies than the average analysts expected.
Well, yeah, it's been a real kind of a choppy market here. You're right on that, Luis. It turns out that, of course, when you come to a USDA report, we always have a lot of people that feel like it's maybe the best place to be is on the sidelines. And so we did have things in the defensive earlier in the week, primarily because of the really one of our best, clearest, and warmest weeks here across much of the major portions of the Midwest, and we had a defensive market going into yesterday's May USDA reports. From the standpoint that it's always, the USDA does. Even if you think you understand they might do something or they should do something, they don't have to do anything that they think that it's not necessary to do at any particular time. And interestingly enough, that kind of happened in some cases here in both wheat and corn, which were really strong yesterday in response to the USDA's updates here for in May. While soybeans were a little lackluster yesterday, they kind of came along with the other two. And then today they got quite excited while the corn and wheat were on the defensive here a little bit going into the weekend. So we can't always seem to have the markets all going in the same direction at the same time.
And it's also surprising that there's market talk of more demand for old and new U.S. crop.
Yeah, it ended up the USDA's numbers here yesterday did have some interesting twists back and forth. Uh, the wheat side of things here, of course, we're trying to figure out exactly what's going to happen in the Black Sea, and USDA doesn't probably know. Most analysts don't really know how it's going to work out. We're all concerned about the fact that we're not getting some of the wheat and corn that was previously sold out of the country and that type of thing. And then, of course, the impact of the 2022-23 years plantings in that region. So that really dominated, particularly the corn and soybean markets, and most of it really is involved in the wheat because the USDA did end up. Interestingly enough, crank down some of its expectations here for various parts of the country, excuse me, various parts of the world here, along with Ukraine. They did kind of shave Ukraine's output by about half of what they did last year on the wheat, and the corn, a similar situation in that. But then they also did take down Europe. Of course, we've had some issues and ongoing concerns about the East on some of their output situations and that. And surprise, surprise, the U.S. Winter wheat crop was also projected lower than expected here yesterday. And so the next year's carryover stock for the U.S. was below expectations here with 619 million bushels as their projection for next year. And they also, interestingly enough, picked up the demand on exports on wheat. It's always a little dicey this time of year. You got your last minute shipments on various giveaway programs and that during the April and May period. And so to get a final number on that, they did actually bring up exports by 20 million on the old crop. But the interesting thing in wheat right now is much to do what the weather's going to do over the next 4 to 6 weeks, because we still have a major impact here on our winter wheat crops are going to be. And the other surprising feature is that we're really having a difficult time planting spring wheat up in the northern plains, and it's impacted corn and soybeans up there too.
If you look at all the major wheat producing regions in the United States, you see that it's pretty much dry.
They're exactly from the standpoint of the hard red wheat areas. It's things are bouncing back a little bit in the white areas up in the northwest. The one that's really got is such a twist is that we've had these late spring uh, rains and snows and things like that across Montana and North Dakota and parts of Minnesota, and it's really has taken a real ding in things here at this point. The USDA, interestingly enough, yesterday did end up taking down its harvested areas in wheat across the country, and so I think that was the, I guess to some extent, then the main feature of a lot of the news of yesterday was the U.S. wheat crop, because that's the only production number we had that was based upon a survey of what was going on out in the field at this point. We'll see what next week's Kansas Wheat Tour has to do. They're going to be coming up with their information and see how they compare to what the USDA put out. They actually took down their yields, but left their harvested acres out there on Kansas, and that. So it'll be interesting how the kind of a seasoned group that really has done this for like 20, 25 years will come up with an estimate for Kansas next week.
And are you more bullish with the energy related commodities, or
Well,
what do you
to
think?
some extent, the stronger energy markets and things like that definitely giving some boost here. I think that might have been even some of the features of today's soybeans a little bit too. The corn market didn't really get any big adjustments in its old crop numbers yesterday, which to some extent was a little surprising that there wasn't some kind of increase in both either energy, ethanol demand, or from the standpoint of our exports here, because of what's really been a very slow process to get any kind of corn or grains out of Ukraine at this point. Interestingly enough, though, with the Ukrainians holding their own, or actually even maybe pushing back the Russians here in the last couple of weeks, they are getting more things planted. The biggest issue right now is there's probably not enough fertilizer, there's not enough chemicals, things of that nature to really get a great crop. And on top of it, they might not have a place to store it, even if they have a crop like they had last year. So it's lots of things up in the unknown in the corn. The biggest thing that really happened in the corn market, though, was the fact that the USDA, which is highly unusual for them to change their yield trend ideas from their kind of longer term, what, excuse me, baseline numbers that they issued way back last winter and used at the Agricultural Outlook Conference in February. This year, and I think it was justified. It was just surprising. Most people in the industry did not expect it to happen this month. It was probably, well, we might hear about next month, but it won't happen this month. They went ahead and decreased their corn yield trend for this year. Now, it's highly justifiable because the fact that we are only 22% of the corn was planted here by May 8th, and the expectations are that we're going to definitely be below the 50% level that is supposedly the 5-year average. And last year we were like 75% completed on corn planting. So right now, I would say that my personal expectations are that we'll probably be around 42 to 45%. That'll be about 20, maybe 22% higher than last week. It's a good weekly jump. But the problem is parts of Minnesota, parts of the Dakotas, maybe even parts of Wisconsin and places like that, even some places in Illinois that didn't get the chance to get in here the early part of this week. It's tough to get every place going right now, so you could have one of those magical 30 or 35% jumps in a weekly planning progress. And then now there's the forecast, at least from my weather people I watch, is that there's some chances for rain to pop up here in the eastern corn belt Saturday night into Sunday, and maybe again Thursday, Friday, and we're still going to be kind of bouncing along here trying to get this corn crop planted, and that does also present opportunities that maybe they'll shift things over to soybeans. And so that also kind of helped provided strength to the corn market yesterday when the ongoing concerns here about our progress. And the one thing that probably also jumped into the USDA's mind is that when you do plant corn behind its normal or best practices levels, and that basically you push that crop's pollination and growth patterns into the warmer portions of the central US weather in July and August. And so that is part of the reason why that the yields might not be as good. And Chicago this week, we've had 90-degree temps for 4 days in a row here, and that's highly unusual to have that high 80s, low 90s temps this early in the month of May. So that just kind of cranks up people's mindsets a little too.
And in South America, we had the news today that's about some frost in southern areas that affect wheat and corn.
I heard there was a shot of potential cold temperatures there in Paranon and that's a real twist at this point. The other big feature, of course, that I and others were looking for was that the USDA was going to make some adjustments in the Brazilian corn crop and second crop, we should say, the second production crop, which is make its overall corn supply. And we got nothing from the USDA, and even our friends there in Brasilia didn't help us out either with any big adjustments. They first put a number out that it was actually up 500,000 metric tons. Then they changed their mind. It was 1.5 million lower on the corn crop at 114.5 versus the 116. So I don't know. I still feel like, and I think you have the same feeling that some of your contacts down there, that the Brazilian corn crop is not super rosy, and we can see that number come down a little bit. But right now, at least, we haven't seen a tremendous amount of the harvest on the second crop at this point. So I guess it's the old game, all of it. I don't know until I see it in the bin, and maybe that's the case. But the recent dryness and the trend in the seasonal monsoon there for moisture in the northern producing areas there of Goiás, Mato Grosso, and others is not the best at this point. But in general here, I think the markets are going to be really tuned into our weather situations, both in North and South America, and what might be happening there, even in Europe and Ukraine over the next 2 or 3 weeks.
All right. We'll see you next Friday.
Sounds good. This thing's kind of a rocking horse, so we'll see where we want to rock to next week.